Question 1. The first paragraph functions to what? So let's look at our answers. A. Describe in detail the broken cask of wine, making it easy for the reader to picture the scene. We're going to spend a minute on this answer because there's a chance that you chose it. And while it's not the best answer, as we'll see in a minute, it's not a terrible answer at first glance. There is some detail here. We see that the cask's hoops had burst and that it lay shattered like a walnut shell. Now, if you already know that a cask is a barrel and you know what a barrel looks like, you know that it's made of strips of wood, for example, and that it has hoops that bind those strips together, then you can probably picture the scene pretty well. The broken hoops, the barrel of wood broken and shattered like a walnut shell. In that case, you might think this is a strong answer. However, notice that if you don't know what a cask is, this is harder to picture. What are hoops on a cask? It's shattered like a walnut shell, but what's it made of? Shell? Glass? Porcelain? If you don't know any of that, it's hard to picture accurately, and that's because there's not enough detail for you to picture it accurately without some outside knowledge. So A is not really a very good answer. And always remember that you're looking for the best answer. There might be more than one correct answer, but you want the best one. So we're going to go ahead and cross this out because there is a better answer. B. Overwhelm the reader with the image of spilled wine, largely through the long second sentence of the paragraph. No, the first paragraph certainly doesn't overwhelm us with the image of spilled wine. There is actually no description or imagery at all of the wine itself in paragraph 1, only the cask. So no, it's not B. C. Quickly show that the wine has spilled without distracting the reader by explaining who dropped it and why. Notice that passive verbs are used here. The cask of wine had been dropped, not somebody in particular dropped it. It had tumbled out, not somebody knocked it out. The description is brief, and the focus is on the fact that it's there, not on whose fault it is that it's there. So C is a good answer. We see quickly that the wine has been spilled, and we're not distracted by any reasons for it. D. Cast blame on whoever dropped the cask and show the spill to be unsightly. No, we've just seen that the use of passive verbs, the cask of wine had been dropped, it had tumbled out, take the focus off who actually is to blame, which means that no blame is cast here. So cross out D. E. Mislead the reader into believing that the breaking of the cask itself was more important than what followed. This just doesn't fit at all. The description is brief, and it leads into the much longer description of what follows, so this won't work. Cross out E. And the correct answer is C. Quickly show that the wine has spilled without distracting the reader by explaining who dropped it. Question 2. The tone of the sentence beginning on line 6 can best be described as what? So let's read the sentence that begins in line 6. The rough, irregular stones of the street, pointing every way, and designed, one might have thought, expressly to lame all living creatures that approached them, had dammed it into little pools. These were surrounded, each by its own jostling group or crowd, according to its size. And now let's take a look at our choices. A. Sarcastic. The narrator here says that the rough, irregular stones of the street seem designed expressly to lame all living creatures that approached them. Since streets are not designed with the intention to lame or cripple anyone or anything that walks on them, the narrator is being insincere here. He is using some rather darkly humorous sarcasm and overstating his case a bit to stress how bad the roads are. So A is a good answer. This is sarcasm. Just taking a quick look at the rest of the answers. B, over-emotional. No, we don't have any great deal of emotion in this sentence. C, apathetic. Apathetic means not to care, and the narrator doesn't seem to be apathetic. He does actually care enough to mention that the roads are terrible enough to cripple anyone or anything that walks on them, so cross out apathetic. D, serene. Serene is peaceful, calm, untroubled, and no, this doesn't fit. It's not peaceful or untroubling to talk about streets seeming to be designed to cripple someone or something. So get rid of D. E, frustrated. If you don't recognize that this is sarcasm, this might throw you off. If you think about the fact that it's probably frustrating to have a street that cripples or hurts those that walk on it. However, even if the situation is frustrating, the tone of the narrator here isn't frustrated. Remember that tone refers to the author's attitude, and his attitude towards the situation isn't one of frustration. He has that darkly humorous element in his tone, which doesn't indicate frustration. So E isn't the best answer. The best answer is A, sarcastic. Question 3. Which of the following statements is true of how people in the passage are characterized? And our answer choices are A, differences between the characters are the main forces that shape their different responses to the spilled wine. Notice that the narrator speaks about all the people, some men, others, men and women, infants, etc. There isn't any individual characterization going on here. People are spoken about as groups, and the responses are spoken about as group responses. There's no focus on differences between individual characters, so A won't work. Cross it out. B, the characters are all portrayed as representative of the community as a whole, more so than as individuals. This is much better. As we saw a minute ago, the narrator speaks about the people in groups, and their responses are collective rather than individual, so this answer works. C, the narrator weaves a considerable amount of physical description into the passage. No, not really. We don't have any physical description of the people here, and the question is asking about how the people are characterized, so cross out C. D, the minimal characterization of individuals in the passage reflects the relatively small amount of importance placed on the role of the people in the scene. While it's true that the characterization of individuals is minimal, the role of the people in the scene is anything but unimportant. They are the scene. Their reactions to the wine, even though collective, are what make up the scene. So this answer won't work. Eliminate D. E, the image of people celebrating the spilled wine together sets the tone for the passage as a whole. This doesn't work because we move from the celebration here to the somber returning to work, or to freezing or to starving, as soon as the wine's all gone. So the tone shifts considerably. And then, at the end, we have this ominous hint about what's going to happen when it talks about the future in which that wine, or blood, will be spilled on the street. So no, the tone doesn't stay celebratory for sure. So eliminate E, and the correct answer is B. The characters are all portrayed as representative of the community as a whole, more so than as individuals. Question 4. The primary difference between the second and third paragraphs is that what? So if we look at these answers, we can see that this is pretty straightforward. A, the second paragraph is concerned with how people respond to the wine, while the third is about how they interact with each other. If you look at the second paragraph, you'll see that even though it mentions a little interaction, men helping women here, the women with the infants, overall, it shows the way people respond to the wine. The third paragraph, on the other hand, is heavy on people's interactions with each other. So A is a very good answer. B, the second paragraph is about how the wine was spilled, and the third is about how people react to the spilled wine. No, this isn't true. We hear about how the wine was spilled in the first paragraph, and we have reactions in the second paragraph, so cross out B. C, the second paragraph is mainly concerned with gustatory imagery, while the third is concerned with auditory imagery. Gustatory refers to the sense of taste, and auditory refers to the sense of hearing. So if we look at the passage, we see there isn't a lot about taste in the first paragraph. We do have people chewing on the wood to get to the wine that is soaked into it, but the taste isn't described. So you can't say that the first paragraph is mainly concerned with taste imagery. Similarly, we only have one auditory image in the second paragraph right here in the beginning, the shrill sound of laughter and amused voices, and then no more auditory imagery throughout. So this isn't a very good answer, certainly not as good as A. So get rid of C. D, the second paragraph questions whether the people's actions are laudable, and the third paragraph presents a response. There's nothing in here at all about whether or not the people's actions are laudable or worthy of praise. So this answer won't work. Eliminate D. E, the second paragraph shows the flaws in the setting, and the third shows the flaws in the people who live there. Other than mentioning the bad condition of the street in the beginning, there's no real focus on problems with the setting in the second paragraph. And the third paragraph doesn't focus on flaws in the people, so E is incorrect. And the best answer is A. The second paragraph is concerned with how people respond to the wine, while the third is about how they interact with each other. Question 5. The phrase raked into a gridiron pattern by fingers in line 36, while having literal meaning, can also be understood as an example of what? And here we have a list of literary terms. Metonymy, oxymoron, paradox, synecdoche, and onomatopoeia. The best case scenario here is that you'll know what all of these literary terms mean. If not, you'll have to guess, and that's the worst case scenario. If you know a few of these, you can do some quick process of elimination. For example, you probably will remember that onomatopoeia is when a word makes the sound that it represents, like pow or boom or crash. There's nothing like that going on here, so you can cross it out. Oxymoron is another one that you'll probably find familiar. Two contradictory terms used together, like Romeo's bright smoke in Romeo and Juliet. There isn't anything like that either, so you can get rid of oxymoron. Paradox is another familiar one. Two things that seem contradictory, but upon closer examination might reveal truth, such as the child is the father of the man. And there's nothing like that here either. So you might be able to quickly eliminate all three of those and be left with synecdoche and metonymy. But the writers of this test question were not trying to make life easy for you here, because synecdoche and metonymy are often confused with each other. Metonymy, however, is when a word is substituted for something related to it, such as Hollywood, which is actually a place, being used to represent the American movie industry, or Broadway, which is a street, being used to represent live theater in New York City. That's not what's going on here. Synecdoche is when part of something is used to represent the whole, such as using the word suits to represent businessmen, or calling workers hired hands, or referring to a car as wheels. That's the closest thing to what's happening here. You can think of fingers as representing the people who are actually doing the raking, since the fingers couldn't do the raking on their own without people attached to them. So, don't forget to learn your literary terms, and the best answer is D, synecdoche.